إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا وسيئات أعمالنا. من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له، وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له، وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله حق تقاته ولا تموتن إلا وأنتم مسلمون. يا أيها الناس اتقوا ربكم الذي خلقكم من نفس واحدة، خلق منها زوجها وبث منهما رجالا كثيرا ونساء، واتقوا الله الذي تساءلون به والأرحام إن الله كان عليكم رقيبا. يا أيها الذين آمنوا اتقوا الله وقولوا قولا سديدا يصلح لكم أعمالكم ويغفر لكم ذنوبكم، ومن يطع الله ورسوله فقد فاز فوزا عظيما. أما بعد، فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله، وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم، وشر الأمور محدثاتها، وكل محدثة بدعة، وكل بدعة ضلالة، وكل ضلالة في النار. ثم أما بعد. Brothers and sisters in Islam, all of us as Muslims are looking for ways to be better, looking for ways to draw closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, looking to prepare for that inevitable meeting with Him Jalla Jalal. And today, inshallah ta'ala, we're going to talk about one of the most prominent ways of getting closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and that is through reading the Quran. Reading the Quran will change your life forever. That is a repetitive and consistent reading of the Quran has a tremendous effect on the heart. But that's only if your heart is alive. That is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, إِنَّ فِي ذَلِكَ لَذِكْرَى لِمَنْ كَانَ لَهُ قَلْبٌ. Indeed, in that there is a reminder for the one who has a heart. Now, obviously, everybody that's alive has a heart. This is not what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is saying here. As Ibn al-Qayyim rahimahullah ta'ala mentions the word heart here, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is referring to the heart that is alive, the heart that is receptive. As Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَا عَلَّمْنَاهُ الشِّعْرَ وَمَا يَنْبَغِي لَهُ إِنْ هُوَ إِلَّا ذِكْرٌ وَقُرْآنٌ مُبِينٌ لِيُنذِرَ مَنْ كَانَ حَيًّا. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran that we didn't teach him poetry. We didn't teach the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam poetry, nor is it proper for him. It is only a reminder in a clear Quran to serve as a warning for those who are alive. That means that their hearts are alive. And so when the Quran is being recited and when you read the Quran, you need to look for your heart at that time. How are you responding to it? Our Messenger sallallahu alaihi wasallam had the best of all hearts, and this is why the Quran had such a profound effect on him. The Prophet ﷺ was the most generous of all people. We know that. As Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu said. But when was he the most generous? He was the most generous in Ramadan. Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu says because Jibril would come to him every night and they would revise the Quran. So he was more generous. كَانَ أَجْوَدَ بِالْخَيْرِ مِنَ الرِّيحِ الْمُرْسَلَةِ. He was more generous with his good and with his wealth than a breeze that would come. So what we understand from this is that the Prophet ﷺ, when he was revising the Quran with Jibril, even his level of iman would increase. His level of certainty in the reward of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And so he will become more generous because he's reading those ayat where Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is talking about those who spend in his cause and those who lend Allah a good loan. And so the Prophet ﷺ became more generous as a result of that because his heart was alive. when the Quran was recited to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he would sometimes cry. We know that hadith of Ibn Mas'ud, radiallahu ta'ala anhu, who said that the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said to him, recite to me the Quran. He said, why should I recite to you the Quran? Recite to you the Quran? وَعَلَيْكَ أُنزِلْ, and the Quran was revealed to you. The Prophet ﷺ said, Inni uhibbu an asma'u min ghayri. I like to hear it from other than me. So Ibn Mas'ud began to recite from the beginning of Surah An-Nisa until he got to the ayah, فَكَيْفَ إِذَا جِئْنَا مِنْ كُلِّ أُمَّةٍ بِشَهِيدٍ وَجِئْنَا بِكَ عَلَى هَؤُلَاءِ شَهِيدًا. How will it be when we bring forth from every nation a witness, and we will bring you as a witness over those people? And he said he looked at the Prophet ﷺ, and tears were coming down his eyes, because the Prophet ﷺ was affected by what he heard in the Quran. But this wasn't just the case with the Prophet ﷺ. In fact, this wasn't just the case for Muslims that the Quran had this effect. If you look at the story of Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, as it comes to Sahih al-Bukhari, when the Muslims were being persecuted and they had to make hijrah, they had to leave Mecca and they were going to Abyssinia, Al-Habasha, Abu Bakr wasn't from the first of those to go. So he was actually going a little bit later. And as he was on his way to Al-Habasha, he was stopped by a trade partner of his named Ibn Dirina. He said to Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, where are you on the way to? He said, I'm on the way to Abyssinia. You know, I've been forced out by Quraysh. And Ibn Dirina said to Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, a man like you, who helps people who are in need, who feed the poor, who offer them shelter, a man like you is not to be removed from his land. Go back to Mecca, you're under my jiwar, you're under my protection. And so Abu Bakr went back to Mecca under the protection of Ibn Dirina. And while he was there, he said he's going to worship Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala the way he would normally worship him, and he would recite the Quran in his yard, the yard of his home. He would recite the Quran. And he had a beautiful voice. And the Quran itself is beautiful. And what happened was the women, the wives of the noblemen of Quraysh and their children, they would come around and they wanted to hear what Abu Bakr was reciting, because now he's under protection. He's not worried about being persecuted. And so they used to come and they would listen to him until the noblemen of Quraysh became scared that their own families would now become Muslims because they're hearing the Quran. And so they went to Ibn Dirina and they said to him, listen, we respect your protection of him. However, you have to tell him to go in his house and worship his Lord, not outside the house, because our women and children are being affected. So Ibn Dirina gave this proposition to Abu Bakr. He said, you can take back your protection. I'm under the protection of Allah. Take it back. And he continued to recite the Quran outside of his home until we know what happened with the rest of the situation with the persecution of the Muslims. But the point is that even the non-Muslims, it was penetrating their hearts. Consider the story of Jubair bin Mut'im. And for you brothers who still have your phones on, please turn your phones off. It's extremely distracting, not only to me, but to the people who are listening. Even if it's the adhan and it's a great thing, turn your phones off. Jubair bin Mut'im, was not a Muslim in the beginning of Islam. And he was actually brought to Medina to ransom those who had been taken during the Battle of Badr. And so he was held in the masjid of the Prophet ﷺ, and he narrates his story. He says that I heard the Prophet ﷺ reciting Surah Al-Tur in Maghrib. He said, and when he got to the statement of Allah, أَمْ خُلِقُوا مِنْ غَيْرِ شَيْءٍ أَمْ هُمُ الْخَالِقُونَ أَمْ خَلَقُوا السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ بَلْ لَا يُوقِنُونَ, to the end of what he recited, which means, are they themselves the creators? أَمْ خُلِقُوا مِنْ غَيْرِ شَيْءٍ, were they created from nothing? Or are they themselves the creators? أَمْ خَلَقُوا السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ, or are they the ones that created the heavens and the earth? بَلْ لَا يُوقِنُونَ, no, they have no certainty. They have no certainty about their faith. He said, when I heard these ayat, and he's not a Muslim at this time, he's a mushrik. He said, when I heard these ayat, كَادَ قَلْبِي أَن يَطِيرَ. He said it was like my heart was going to take flight. In another narration, he says, وَذَلِكَ أَوَّلْ مَا وَقَرَ الْإِيمَانُ فِي قَلْبِي. That was the first time that Iman took root in my heart. All from what? From listening to the Quran. In fact, to go a bit further, we know that the Quran has this effect even on inanimate objects. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, لَوْ أَنزَلْنَا هَذَا الْقُرْآنَ عَلَى جَبَلٍ لَرَأَيْتَهُ خَاشِعًا مُتَصَدِّعًا مِنْ خَشْيَةِ اللَّهِ. If we would have revealed this Quran, sent it down upon a mountain, something that is that strong, it's inanimate, it's not like the heart which moves, it's strong, solid. If we would have sent down the Quran on a mountain, you would have seen it trembling, crumbling in awe of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this is the effect that the Quran has on inanimate objects. So what about our hearts? What about the hearts? Brothers and sisters in Islam, let's just take it to the side for a minute. If you had someone that you love dearly, perhaps someone that you admired even, and they were on their deathbed, and they said, I want to write to you, I want to write down some words of advice and wisdom. And I want to share this with you. And so they penned down this letter to you. And you know that they want good for you, and you know that they've lived a life of experience, and they have wisdom, and so you're eager. You want to know what it is that they have the right to. And they write down a letter that is very valuable, you cherish it. In fact, maybe you even take a picture of it so that it's always on your phone. It's easily accessible. Anytime you want to go back and read it, you can go back and read it. You know, think about it. You're about to lose this person, and this is what they leave behind for you. And so you want that, and you keep that, and you read it frequently. And in fact, maybe you even share it with others. You know, people that are going through certain situations, and there's something relevant in that letter to their lives, and so you share it with them. Maybe he's giving you some wisdom that is like, you know, overarching. It's not just something for you, but something that all people can benefit from. And so maybe you tweet it or you send it out on social media or whatever. If this is the relationship that you would have with that type of correspondence that comes from another man just like you or another woman that's like you, then what about the communication that has come from Rabbul Alameen? The communication that has come from our Maker subhanahu wa ta'ala. He didn't send down the Quran to be played with or just to be recited. He sent down the Quran to be understood. What is our relationship with that? What is our relationship with the Quran? Is it a book that we just put up on a shelf? Or is it something that we read and ponder over and try to understand? You know, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has taught us in the Quran about himself. So if we just pick up the Quran and we read it, we'll learn about his qualities and his attributes and his compassion subhanahu wa ta'ala so that we grow to love him. So that we love him subhanahu wa ta'ala. And hopefully that we earn his love. He teaches us in the Quran about his justice so that we respect his laws. So that we have a healthy fear of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So that we don't step out of bounds. He teaches us about his mercy so that when we do fall short, we don't lose hope and we don't despair. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us about life in the Quran. What is this life even all about? So that we can begin to prioritize things. So that we can begin to prepare for the other thing that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala teaches us in the Quran, which is the hereafter. Death, which everyone, regardless of gender, ethnicity, socioeconomic background, everybody's going to taste that. And everybody has to prepare for that. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is teaching us about this in the Quran. However, what tends to happen, and it is a wonder, that with all of the depression that we find, we have Muslims that are clinically depressed. They have to take medication. And the anxiety and the worrying and the sadness, that we turn to other than the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Nah, this is the reality. Muslims caught up in a whole self-help movement. So they read, Covey's 7 Habits or Carnegie or Green or whoever's the flavor of the month. They read it, they adhere to the principles, they write down the program, they stick to it strictly. That's not to say that we can't benefit from other than the Quran. No, we can benefit from various sources. But why is the Quran, or why does it seem to be our last resort? So, if this is the case for you, if you feel like your heart is hard, and when you hear the Quran, it doesn't have that same effect on you, then you have to be real with yourself. Don't blame it on anyone else. Recognize that there's some degree of neglect as it relates to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Recognize that we can do better. Recognize that you have to cut out some time to dedicate to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Because if you feel that heart being hard, it is definitely, without a doubt, due to its distance from revelation. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Quran, أَلَمْ يَأْنِ لِلَّذِينَ آمَنُوا أَن تَخْشَعَ قُلُوبُهُمْ لِذِكْرِ اللَّهِ وَمَا نَزَلَ مِنَ الْحَقِّ وَلَا يَكُونُوا كَالَّذِينَ أُوتُوا الْكِتَابَ مِنْ قَبْلُ فَطَالَ عَلَيْهِمُ الْأَمَدُ فَقَسَتْ قُلُوبُهُم وَكَثِيرٌ مِّنْهُمْ فَاسِقُونَ. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, has not the time come for those who believe to surrender their hearts to the remembrance of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and that which He has revealed from the truth, the Quran, the revelation. And that they not be like those who were given the book before. And so the time span, it was a long time span between revelations. And so their hearts became hard. Many of the Muslims are just simply not taking the time necessary to have that relationship with the speech of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. In fact, some Muslims only read the Quran in Ramadan, as if that's what we're required to do. That's a great thing for us to do, read the Quran in Ramadan. And then, even that reading is a reading for barakah. Meaning it comes off the lips because you want a reward for every letter. There's 10 rewards. The Quran was revealed for you to ponder over the Quran, for you to reflect over its meanings, so that you act according to the Quran. And whoever approaches the Quran in this manner, then the Quran will be a guide for him. It will be a light at times of darkness. It will be his security at times of instability. And it will serve as a cure for spiritual, emotional illness, and even physical diseases. وَنُنَزِّلُ مِنَ الْقُرْآنِ مَا هُوَ شِفَاءٌ وَرَحْمَةٌ لِلْمُؤْمِنِينَ. And we reveal from the Quran that which is a cure and a mercy for the believers. أقول قولي هذا وأستغفر الله لي ولكم من كل ذنب وخطيئة فاستغفروه إنه هو الغفور الرحيم. الله. الحمد لله رب العالمين وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله ولي الصالحين وأشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله بعثه الله رحمة للعالمين. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك وأنعم على نبينا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. أما بعد. Brothers and sisters in Islam, we live in a different era. We live at a time when you might ask a 7-year-old to do something and say, I'm busy right now. Everybody is busy. Or at least that's the claim. And if you really were to take a step back and examine, well, what exactly are you busy with, you'll find that a lot of times we're busy with things that are not very beneficial for us. They may not contribute to our well-being or the well-being of our families and society. It's just busy. Reading posts on social media for hours a day, watching the news for hours a day. And you really have to take a step back as it relates to the book of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and ask yourself, what value does it have to you? Because everything that is valuable to you, you make time for it. It's just the reality. We make time for the things that we value, for the things that we hold dear, for the things that we love. We make time for it. And so, it is my sincere advice to myself first and then to all of you that we make time for the Quran. At least, and this is like the very minimum, that you take at least 20 minutes of the day to dedicate to the Quran. Now, some of you, and this is, I'll speak to everybody, if you don't know how to read the Quran, there's some people that actually cannot read the Quran in Arabic. Listen to the Quran. Listening to the Quran is ibadah. We see the Prophet ﷺ, the hadith of Mas'ud, he listened to the Quran. That affect one. Take a portion that you're going to listen to for that day, 4 pages, 5 pages, whatever it may be. Read the translation of it and then listen to it. Or listen to it and then read the translation of it. The point is to start somewhere. When you fall in love with the Quran, you'll give it more than 20 minutes, and that's for certain. But start somewhere. That's the bare minimum. And I have a greater request for all of you. And I hope that this request is something that you take seriously. I want all of you today to start memorizing the Quran. I want you to die as a hafiz. I want you to die as someone who has totally memorized the Quran. Abdullah bin Amr ibn al-As radiallahu ta'ala anhu said that the Prophet ﷺ said, يُقَالُ لِصَاحِبِ الْقُرْآنِ يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ. It will be said to the one who is the Sahib al-Quran, that is someone who has memorized the Quran and acted according to it. He said to Sahib al-Quran, يَوْمَ الْقِيَامَةِ, he said to him on the day of judgment, اقرأ وارتقي. It will be said to him, read and raise. You'll be going up in levels. وَرَتِّلِ الْقُرْآنِ كَمَا كُنْتَ تُرَتِّلُ فِي الدُّنْيَا. And recite the Quran the way that you used to recite it in this life. Because your manzila, your station in Jannah, will be at the last ayah that you stop at. Nobody should say, I can't memorize the Quran. Wallahi, if you start today and you take 1 ayah per day, you'll be done in 17 years. 17 years is not a long time. That's 2035. It's not a long time. You'll be done in 17 years. Somebody might say, well, that just seems so long. It doesn't. It's okay. Take it one step at a time. Because if your intention is to memorize the Quran, then bi-idhnillah, even if you die short of that goal, you will be written as those who have memorized the Quran. وَمَنْ يَخْرُجْ مِنْ بَيْتِهِ مُهَاجِرًا إِلَى اللَّهِ وَرَسُولِهِ ثُمَّ يُدْرِكْهُ الْمَوْتِ فَقَدْ وَقَعَ أَجْرُهُ عَلَى اللَّهِ. For whoever goes out, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, whoever leaves out of his home, migrating to Allah and His Messenger, and then death comes to him, his reward is with Allah. In other words, the reward of hijrah. Why? Because he took that step. He tried. He did what he could do. And then death came between him and his goal. If you attempt from today, how long, you might ask yourself, did it take the Prophet ﷺ to memorize the Quran? The Quran was revealed over 23 years. And so it took 23 years to memorize. 17 years is not a long time. You can start today from the back of the Quran, قُلْ أَعُوذُ بِرَبِّ النَّاسِ. And then tomorrow, Malik al-Nas. And then the next day, Ilah al-Nas. And if you already know those surahs. Then you can start from wherever you are, and it will be quicker than the 17 years. But don't let 2035 come, because inshallah you're going to remember this khutbah. Don't let 2035 come and say, Ya laytani. Ya laytani badat. Oh, I wish I would have just started then. Because some of you, bi'idhnillah, are going to come before that time, and you're going to say that it was from that khutbah that I started memorizing the Quran. Allah Azza wa Jalla blessed me to be from amongst the kuffar. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make us from amongst those who it is said to them in the hereafter, read the way you used to read in this dunya, and we rise up in those levels. ربنا لا تزغ قلوبنا بعد إذ هديتنا وهب لنا من لدنك رحمة إنك أنت الوهاب ربنا اغفر لنا ولإخواننا الذين سبقونا بالإيمان ولا تجعل في قلوبنا غلا للذين آمنوا ربنا إنك رؤوف رحيم ربنا آتنا في الدنيا حسنة وفي الآخرة حسنة وقنا عذاب النار. أقم الصلاة.